welcome to Book Bites with Maggie. My name is Maggie. I'm the Youth Services Assistant here at Napanee Public Library, and it is my great honor and pleasure to bring you some books through our collection that we have available for you. During today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that I personally call time slip narratives. What that means is they are books that are told from one or more perspectives, usually two perspectives, sometimes a few more, where there is a disconnect in the time continuum. So there are books that are written many generations apart, books that are several decades apart, things like that. Depending on the book, the slip can be a little bit different. But these are fascinating books that is part of a genre that's more new to me, probably in the last 5 years. And so I hope that I can get you to try to read something maybe a little bit new. During my episode today, if you see a book or you hear a book that really fancies you and it's something that you would like to read, give us a shout out in the comments below, and we would be happy to put those books on hold for you. We are here 7 days a week, and we can set those aside for you with your Napanee Public Library card. I will try to mention with each title if we have it available in other formats. For those of you who live in the Napanee Public Library Service District, your library card does work with our digital collection. So if you prefer an ebook or an e-audiobook format, I will try to mention if the titles that we're mentioning today are available in those collections, because if that's what you prefer to use, then we will be able to get those into your hands as well. Again, if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments. We have multiple people that are helping us see what is being dropped into the comments. If you have suggestions, if you loved a book for a different reason than what I've mentioned, pop that in there too for other people who are watching our episode today, so they can see that multiple people have loved it. Or by all means, if you have something that contradicts what I said, say that too, because everybody reads books differently, has different points that they may or may not have loved, and that's part of what this is. It's an engaging way to share books and content that we have here in our collection. The first book that I wanted to share with you today, this is a book that came out last year, The Lions of Fifth Avenue by Fiona Davis. This was actually a Good Morning America Book Club pick, so it might be one that's familiar to some of you. This is an excellent story that really fascinated me, and it actually made the New York Public Library become something on my bucket list. I like to visit libraries when I go on vacation, but I've never been to New York, and the way that they build some of the scenes in this story specifically, I really enjoyed getting to know the ins and outs of both the modern day New York Public Library and the historical New York Public Library. For this one, this book is set in 1913 and in 1993. There is several generations that disconnect our two main protagonists. Our first protagonist there from the 1913, she is the wife of the library superintendent. And back then what that meant was if you held that position, you and your family got to actually live in an apartment that is inside of the library. How cool would that be to live inside of an apartment? So she is an aspiring journalist, and in 1913, women who worked outside of the home, still kind of groundbreaking. And so she's trying to fight some of those stereotypes in this story by being a journalist, heading out into New York City, and she actually stumbles upon all kinds of interesting things that she didn't even know about in her own community. And then some things happen in the library that really pull her back in. She's blamed for things. If she wasn't working, then stuff wouldn't have happened, different things like that. Now, on our reverse side, our second protagonist is from the 90s, and she is a current librarian in the New York Public Library, and she is curating a rare books gallery, highlighting some of the books that are in the Berg collection. And in that, she finds out that this first protagonist is somebody in her lineage, and so the connections are there. So you're gonna flip back and forth between the chapters, hearing her side of the story and then going to a quote-unquote modern-day story from the 1993 set. So this is a fantastic book that if you love libraries as much as many of the staff here do, you're gonna like this one too. So this is The Lions of Fifth Avenue. It is a fiction book. It's going to be upstairs with our fiction collection. We have it as a physical book that I'm holding here, an ebook and an e-audiobook, and it has definitely won lots of awards, so we'd love to get this into your hands. Oh, I'm getting a comment. I need to go to New York City. Should we stop right now and we'll just head to the airport and we can go to New York? I want to see the lions. I think that sounds so cool. The second book that I would like to share with you, this is not a new book to Book Bites. Denise Hunter is an absolute favorite Christian fiction author of mine. She has been here at the library and done programs with us, and she is a local author. So oftentimes we have different tasks for our reading challenges where we'll say, try to read a book from an author that lives in Indiana. And this one would come up multiple times. This would be her newest series. This is a trilogy. It is based on like a set of 3 siblings. So each sibling has their own book, but they're all tied together in the Bluebell Inn series. This first book here is Lake Season. It's currently checked out, and I cannot be more excited to see that more people are getting into this series. But we can definitely put it on hold for you if what I have to say about this book piques your interest in any way. So in this first book, it's, like I said, 3 siblings. They recently have lost their parents, and their parents' goal was to turn their historical home that used to be an inn, that was turned into a house, back into the inn and back to its former glory. In doing so, they actually find some letters hidden in the wall of their home, and it sets forth a second storyline where you get to live in the life of the letters that they found. And so the back and forth has that disconnect, and then it all weaves together into a perfect story. If I remember correctly, this was the first time slip book that Denise wrote, and she did a fantastic job weaving the 2 storylines together. And all 3 books have now been written. The last one just came out last fall, I believe. October Skies. I think it came out last fall. So if you like to read Boom Boom Boom, all 3 books, they all have been published, and this would be a great series to get into. And if you aren't sure if time slip is going to be your thing, this would be a great intro as well. Lake Season, specifically this book, we have it as a book, and we also have it as an ebook on Libby and Overdrive, so you can use that as your digital item as well. Okay, this book here is one that I had the great honor and privilege of reading before it actually came out. This one came out earlier this year, The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. Honestly, I picked it up because of the cover. You're really not going to get a good look at it unless you're holding it in your hands. But one of the tasks for Expand Your Horizons, a group that we have here at the library that has you read different task-related books, has on there to read a book with a beautiful cover. And let me tell you, this one is beautiful. It is like a dark purple, and our apothecary jar has a luminescent gold outline on it. This book, honestly, it was fantastic, and I was telling anybody that would listen to me to read this book before it ever came out, and so once it came and it hit our shelves, it automatically had people on hold for it, and that makes me so excited. This one is probably one of our oldest narratives that's going to be mentioned today. So we have our current day London, again, she's kind of like an aspiring journalist. She wants to write, and she is not from London, but she visits London on what would have been her 10th wedding anniversary just as a vacation, and she finds in one of her tourist things an apothecary bottle in the river. Now, an apothecary bottle is like an old medicine bottle, and in her discovery she starts tracing down where this bottle came from, what it could have been like dispensed of, and the story behind it, and she totally gets enamored with what her find is. And through the help of a librarian, go librarians, she is able to track down and discover this story that then opens up the second narrative in our time slip from 1791. And this is a fantastic story about an apothecary. Now that would be, again, like a pharmacist who secretly dispensed poisons to women who had men that wronged them. So go powerful women, right? So this story is an excellent early mystery with that time slip in it. So again, if you're unfamiliar with that concept of reading 2 different protagonists, different points of view with a disconnect in time, this would be a great intro to that, because it has everything. It has the historical significance. It has like the medicine and the science behind it. It has that little bit of a mystery, and then there is also like a romance storyline going on as well. This is a fantastic, fantastic book, and my favorite line from the review on Amazon is, "Not everyone will survive." and you're going to love this book. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. Again, we have it as a physical book. It is a new book currently, so this is one that we've had in our collection for less than 4 months. Our new book collection is just inside that main corridor, and we'd be happy to help you find it. We also have it as an ebook and an e-audiobook if you would prefer to use the digital content. Has anybody read this one yet?
I do really like the cover. It's
Isn't
very
it so
good.
beautiful?
Let me
It's
just
so
people.
beautiful. With the plastic on it, it's really hard to see. Can you have like book envy? Ah. Okay, the next book that I'd like to share with you, this is one that I picked up specifically because it was time slip. I read this one a couple years ago. I couldn't tell you when. This is going to be from our teens section. And, okay, I know. I read it right after watching The Greatest Showman. How many years ago was that? I don't know. I
think
became
that was 2016.
Has it been that long? Maybe it has. I don't know. This book, it focuses around the circus, but not just circus animals, because I know how everybody gets like all, ah! Can't read Water for Elephants for the life of me because I bawled halfway through the story. But this one is about a trapeze artist. I should correct myself. It's about 2 trapeze artists. So in 1965, Victoria, she flees a home that is not stable. She is not received well in her home. And so she leaves this setting where she is being raised, and she leaves and she joins the circus at 16. That's our first protagonist. Now, then, 50 years later, in 2015, our second time slip comes in, and Victoria's her granddaughter, is forced to leave the circus that she has grown up in. So now we have 3 generations that have been a part of the circus. They've all been the grandma and the granddaughter were both trapeze artists, and the mom worked with animals, and she has gotten a new job in Florida, and they have to leave the circus in order for her to take this job at an animal sanctuary. And Callie, she's the granddaughter, she doesn't want to go. I mean, the circus is the only life that she's ever known, and so it's the coming to the circus and all that it has given to Victoria, and then she starts to write these letters, and Callie, in packing up, discovers her grandmother's journals, and so you get that time slip back and forth between the grandma and the granddaughter, and that tie-in with the circus and the trapeze arts. It's fantastic. So this one, it's like perfectly down to saying that new families can be found in unexpected places. So a great story. Don't be afraid to read teen books. They really are for people of all ages. And again, if you're new to that time slip narrative, this would be an easy one to pick up on. Jacqueline Woodson is truly one of my favorite authors. I read anything and everything that she writes. She's got fiction, she's got nonfiction, she's got kids books, she's got picture books, she's got everything, literally everything. And I will automatically read whatever she writes because it is so imperative for me to read these diverse characters and to get to live the lives of other people that I might not get to experience otherwise. Red at the Bone has won multiple awards. This is not her newest title, but it is one that has really spoken to me, and it fits this time slip thing that we're talking about here. In this one, we have Strong Family Dynamics, and it's from 1985, and then our present day would be 2001. And the relationships and the experiences and the family dynamics that take place based on the community and the people that you are surrounded with is what draws in the storyline for this one. So it's where okay, I don't want to give it away. How do I say this? That like a teenager who is forced to grow up before they would have otherwise, and how they are held accountable for the actions and the way that they react to those actions. I feel like I'm speaking in circles. Help me out here if anybody has read this one. Okay, so you're forced to grow up before you need to. You got that? But then based on the outcome of those forced actions plays obviously out in the rest of your life. So what does it look like to be held accountable for a decision when you're not old enough to be held accountable yet?
Like dealing with childhood adversity as an adult.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Okay, so it's been a couple years since I've read this one. So I'm just going to say, like, what happens if you become a teen parent and you make decisions as a young teen parent, but you're still a child yourself, what does that look like going forward when you had to make decisions before you weren't qualified to make them? I hope I didn't just give it away because I can't specifically remember that it's, I don't know. Just a fantastic book.
Spoiler
Read this
alert.
one.
Spoiler
I need to
alert.
reread it. That's where I'll go. I need to reread this one. But it fits this time slip narrative. We have this one as a physical book, an e-audio book, and an e-book for those of you who like the digital content. Rachel Houck is another author that is not new to Book Bites. We've mentioned her many times, and actually this would have been, I'm almost positive, she is the first author for me that nailed what I call this time slip narrative. She has really found a niche in the Christian fiction genre with finding these books or writing these books that have that dual narrative. This one is a fantastic standalone read. The writing desk takes place when a modern day writer, Tenley, she kind of has writer's block, and so she is invited to go back and live with her mom who's not well, and in doing so her goal is to get over this writer's block and to find the next book that she needs to write. And she goes back to where her mom lives, and she sits down at this desk that is a very, very old desk. And then our second narrative comes in, and Birdie actually used this desk 100 years prior and has left things for Tenley to find. So you have a disconnect of 100 years with this time slip. To be a writer 100 years ago, the adversity that Birdie felt, it matches with that other book that I was talking about, like the role of a woman in historical society and what it looked like to push boundaries. That's what Birdie was kind of up against. Her parents did not want her to be a writer. They wanted her to be a mom, to be a wife, to be in the home and to not push the boundaries. And she desperately wanted to use her skills as a writer. And so she pushes those boundaries. And in doing so, the discoveries that she makes then helps our modern day protagonist, Tenley, kind of get through her own things. So it's a great book. This is one that we have as a physical book, and we also have as an ebook on Libby and Overdrive. We have lots of books from Rachel Houck. So if you enjoy this one, and I know I have shared this one with many people who have come in looking for a title, we'd love to put this one on hold for you, and you can enjoy this book as well.
It kind of gives me Bridgerton vibes. Would you say that they're somewhat similar?
Okay, well,
Like with the
definitely not
historical
as
part?
risque. Totally different
True.
genres.
True.
Totally different genres.
Like the
But yes,
the Christian
pushing
fiction.
the boundaries of what the expectations are. It would definitely tie into that. I would agree with that. Yeah. This one, Lisa Wingate's The Book of Lost Friends. This one, oh goodness, let me think back. It was mentioned in a previous Book Bites. This one would have come historical fiction. When did we do historical fiction on Book Bites? I feel like maybe January or February of this year. So this one tied in perfectly with our historical fiction, because though many of these books have some historical content and settings, they are not specific to actual events. This one is different. This one actually has something that truly happened. And you know, I never thought about, when I was learning about the Civil War in history, and obviously the trading back and forth of humans as property, what that could look like for somebody who was denied literacy skills. I mean, you're separated from your family, and what that could look like. This book taught me some history that I did not know existed. So there's something called, in these old Southern newspapers, after the Civil War was over, newspapers helped families get back together, families that were separated by slavery. Now, I didn't know that was a thing. And so this was very eye-opening to me to have that in my face. Oh my gosh, I never ever considered what it would look like to be separated from my family and then try to get back to them without having those skills of being able to read and write myself. So the theme of those Lost Friends newspaper articles is what sets this book. And so this one we have Louisiana in two different times. So our modern day is 1987. Obviously, that's still several years ago, but it takes into account, obviously we have so many privileges these days with, handheld computers and phones and things like that we would have been able to do all this research. If our main protagonist would have been modern day in that case, this book wouldn't have lined up as well as it did. But our teacher that discovers these lost newspapers, she is then flipped back into what it looked like to be a slave and to be separated from her family. So we have both Louisiana, 1987, that was our first one, and our second protagonist is from 1875. So you get to experience and really walk in the shoes of those slaves being separated not only from their parents, but also from their siblings, not treated well, and then going through the steps of trying to relocate and to get your family back together again. So our teacher discovers this just like I did, because I didn't know it existed, discovered that these papers existed, and then it all ties together. So again, you go back and forth chapter to chapter, getting the different narratives, and she just weaves it perfectly. Lisa Wingate is a very familiar author to many of you. She wrote Before We Were Yours, and we've talked about that one on Book Bites as well. If you are looking for a light story, this is not the one that you want. This is heavy stuff with true historical content in it. So don't pick it up unless you're ready for a heavier read or unless you need to cry. We have this one as large print. That's what I'm currently holding up. You can read it just like any other book. We don't have it just as a regular print. All it means is that the font inside is a little bit larger, but it reads just like a regular book. We also have it as a book on CD if you want the physical discs. We have it as an ebook and an e-audiobook on Libby and Overdrive, so you can listen to those ones as well. Have any of you guys read this one? Not so far. Okay, so I spoke earlier about expand your horizons. This is one that I picked up specifically to fill in a task. I feel like it was last year. It might have been 2019, I'm not sure, but we had to read a book that had a recipe in it. And so I was looking for a book, and this one came across some different newspaper and magazine articles that I was reading with upcoming books. This one is A Recipe for a Perfect Wife by Karma Brown, and our two protagonists live in the same house. One is a modern day woman who is living on her own. The second one is a quintessential housewife from it's raining, can you hear it? From the 1950s. And in this story of them living in the same house, and again, the expectations of women in the 1950s and what that could look like, and then having huge life changes as a modern day person, the parallels between them are phenomenal. So you get to meet other characters in their surroundings, neighbors of this house that they both share, and what the expectations are of being a wife. It's a fantastic book for anybody looking for some humor, but I mean it's not a quite light read. But it's good. So I hope that you enjoy this one. So I wrote down here, it's a dual narrative of a modern day woman who finds hidden notes from the previous homeowner, who is a quintessential 1950s housewife, and then it parallels between having to question your relationships, what it looks like, and what it means to be a wife fighting for your place in a patriarchal society. This one here, The Recipe for a Perfect Wife, we have as a physical book. We also have it as an ebook and an e-audio book. I feel like the parallels between The Lost Apothecary and The Recipe for the Perfect Wife, they are very similar. So there are some themes that are similar between these two titles. This one, I remember what else I liked about this one. So many of you guys have also read Taylor Jenkins Reid. She's the one that wrote Daisy Jones and the Six. She has lots and lots of books, and she loved this one. So if you take things from other authors and you really enjoy a specific author, finding books that they themselves have enjoyed reading is also something that's super fun. So you might pick this one up and see if you enjoy it as well. How many of you guys have read any of these time slip books before? Obviously, I only have a small selection here. You want to tell me in the comments if you've read this genre or if it's totally new to you, or...
I mean, wouldn't the most popular one be The Notebook?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a good
Yeah,
one?
I mean, that would be the perfect one. So if you can't hear Michaela, she said probably the most popular one is Nicholas Sparks' The Notebook. That's a time slip. So it's from two different perspectives in history or looking back. And this genre, like I said, it's very, very new, and it might go by different terms. Time slip is just what I call it. When I'm cataloging books on my personal Goodreads, then I sit there and I'm like, oh, this is a time slip, and I will try to note that.
The Time Traveler's Wife?
I haven't read that one.
The Vow? That's another one. I
haven't
don't
read
know if The Vow is. I think that's more she gets amnesia. Maybe
well,
not.
I mean, there's a difference between a book that has like reflective parts and having a totally different main character protagonist.
Then time travel?
It's not going through a wormhole. It's
Right.
two different people, two different protagonists, two different trains of thought and everything. This is one that I have on my radar. I have not read it yet. The Sedgwick County Chronicles by Amanda Wynn. This is the first book, Roots of Wood and Stone. This one came across on a webinar that I did a couple of months ago, and I'm like, oh, that sounds really, really good. So I haven't read it yet. We do have it in our collection, but I think I might wait to read it because the way it sounds, like with it being a series, it might be one of those kind of like Denise Hunter's that I'll wait till they're all written and then read them back to back to back. But to each their own. It is one that we have in our current collection, so if it's one that you have read, you could let us know if it is a good fit for this one. Again, I'm basing that solely on what I have heard from other people that it fits this time slip genre. So again, that's The Roots of Wood and Stone by Amanda Wynn, and we have it as a physical book here in our collection. It is a new title on our new bookshelves. That's going to be it for this episode of Book Bites with Maggie. We'll be back again later this month with another topic full of books to recommend to you from our Napanee Public Library collection. We'll put a list of all the titles that we mentioned today in the comments so that you can refer back to them. And as always, you can look at previous Book Bites to see other topics that we have spoke about both this season and last season. So that's it for me. I will see you guys again next time that we come to you with more book recommendations. Have a great day.